Good morning, everybody. I hope you guys slept well and got some rest. I needed to sleep quite a bit. This past weekend was the Global Game Jam. You know, that is offensively white and very bright there. There we go. Love it. So, yeah, this weekend was the Global Game Jam, 2024. And I did not get enough sleep over the weekend. So I spent both Monday and Tuesday basically just trying to correct my sleep schedule there. And we're back. So I'm well rested. I hope you guys are well rested. And speaking of Global Game Jam, the aim for today is to just sort of talk about what the team that I was working with made, what we did, how everything sort of came together, what that looks like, and so on and so forth. And so basically, let's dive right in here. Let me pause some of the music we got going on here, just so you can get the full effect of what we're going on. And I'll go ahead and run what was our final product. So this is what we submitted for the Global Game Jam 2024. This was our game here. Of course, working title and things of that nature, right? So this is our funny little fighter. Oh, you know what? I should actually take a step back. Um, the th- let's go all the way to the beginning. If you've never heard of a game jam before, usually it is a not a competition, but a sort of challenge to make a video game from scratch in 48 hours or less, or some other like ridiculous time constraint, right? And then usually the way it works is that there's a core theme that you are supposed to design your game around, right? And this year, for Global Game Jam 2024, the theme was Make Me Laugh, right? Just talking about a bunch of things, right? Because this is not supposed to be like an advertisement for Global Game Jam. This is me talking about what it was like participating in this event, right? And for a theme, Make Me Laugh, I don't particularly like that theme. Um, there are themes I've had before. I remember for the very, very first Global Game Jam, at least I'm pretty sure it was one of the first Global Game Jams, they actually just put up the symbol of Ouroboros. That is the snake eating its own tail. They just put up the symbol. They didn't even explain what it was. They didn't give you a title or anything. Half of us in the room didn't even know what it was. We had to go like look it up, which really added to sort of the mystique. Is like, how do we take just a symbol and turn that into a game? And that was a very exciting concept, right? The theme "Make Me Laugh" is not my favorite theme. I don't like it. And I don't like it for a couple reasons in particular. And give me just 2 seconds because I'm also realizing that my chat is not up again, which I don't know why I don't get to have my chat each time I do this. How did I got rid of it during the frickin' goodness gracious me. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Give me just a second to figure it out here. There should be chat. There we go. Oh my goodness. Why that keeps closing is beyond me. Anyway, the theme this year. So the theme was Make Me Laugh, and I don't like that theme. And part of the reason why I don't like that theme is because it is deeply subjective, right? If you are trying to make a person laugh, if that is the goal, is to make the player laugh in some way, um, there's no real way to guarantee that that's going to happen, right? Some jokes which are funny to some people are like deeply offensive to other people and don't even register on the radar for other people. And also, problematically, once you tell someone a joke, you can't tell them that exact same joke just again, right? It doesn't work that way, right? So, any options of telling jokes to the player or trying to make the player laugh are very, very difficult and very, like nigh impossible to sort of design around. Conversely, if you make a game where your goal is to try and make like a NPC laugh or make someone in a game laugh, that carries its own weight of just like this isn't really fun or funny or engaging, right? Like how do I make a joke for a computer that is barely functioning in the first place because we only have 48 hours to make this game? So, with all of that in mind, we started looking at the problem a little bit differently. How could you use the theme Make Me Laugh to do something else, right? Well, One of the sort of bonus challenges this year was the fact that this year, January 2024, Steamboat Willie is no longer under copyright. So we sort of started with that as an aesthetic point and started building up this idea and narrative of a 2D fighting game where the way you fight and the way you combat each other is through use of pratfalls, gags, like the hold your hand out and you've got like a buzzer in it, sort of real slapstick kind of humor, and you use that to fight each other. And what you're doing is, rather than depleting a health bar, you are increasing your own sort of sense of humor about the situation, right? The more you hit your opponent with gags, the funnier you find it, until finally you reach a sort of critical point and you win the round because you bust out in hysteria and laughing, right? So the goal is to build up a gauge of laughter by hitting your opponent with jokes and gags. So that was the idea, and then we had 48 hours to make that a reality. And what you see behind me is sort of the result of that 48 hours. So we can take a look at some of a couple of the different things. Of course, we've got quit, which I guess you can assume what that does. We've got our credits, lovely. We actually had a number of people who were able to help out with. In particular, Valkyrie and Madison did the graphics, so we had one character each for our two artists. We also had Jonathan doing art, and even I did some art as well, so you get to see that. We had Mars and Edgar. They were both programmers. They helped out a lot. I did programming as well. I volunteered kind of to take on the role of project lead, so I was trying to keep tabs on everybody, make sure everything was going smoothly, just jumping in to help wherever I could whenever there was something else. And then about halfway through the project, we got Nick, who came in with some fantastic music and sound. And I'm actually going to go back to the main menu here for just a moment. I'm going to just be quiet and then turn up some of his main menu music, because it was just really, really nice. I don't normally get to work with someone in a game jam who does or knows music, let alone makes their own over the course of the jam. So the fact that this was something that Nick made. Also, I should note about Nick, another shout out to him, is that he was in another country. He was in another country, a time zone across the world. I totally forget where, but he was like hundreds of miles away from our current location and participated in this game jam. So I'm going to turn up his main menu music for just a moment so that we can give that a listen, because it's great. Fantastic. I love it. And then we'll pop into the game here. So that was the idea. That was what we were trying to accomplish. Did we accomplish that? Well, yes and no, right? If I hit start here, and I love just the one fight and we got in the background, we got a couple different things. We've got two different characters, and these characters can move around. That is fantastic. Again, each character was made by an individual artist, which is awesome. And they each have a series of attacks, little stand-in walking animations. We've got an attack for sort of our lizard on the right where, and I don't know quite what the resolution is for you guys, but she's stabbing with a swordfish, which is fantastic. And then our sort of pratfall gag, because we relied on fish, is our character on the left-hand side there also swings a much larger fish, almost like a club, in an effort to beat the opponent. And you go back and you sort of do these stabs back and forth. So if you hit the opponent, click, 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 you can see up top there that we have the, it's interesting because it's reversed, right? And this is something that we didn't get to do in time. And this is a really, really good example of just how stressful and strenuous that 48 hours can be. So up until the last maybe hour to 45 minutes of the entire game jam, and I mean like we've already completed 47 hours and 15 minutes of our 48 hours, several things were not working, right? The health bars were not working at all. Okay, we had other mechanics such as pushing back and stuff like that that were not working at all. So there was a great number of things that were just not working at all. So even though we've got these health bars at the top of the screen, which are currently depleting every time you get hit by an attack, that was something that we didn't get into like the last possible minute. So they deplete, they don't fill. That was one of the things that it was supposed to do, but we didn't hit that goal. But we still have some kind of feedback going on. The other thing is there's supposed to be rounds. You can see under each health bar in the center, we've got a sort of a comedy tragedy face going on. And then beneath that are two little tragedy faces. Those are supposed to be the round counters, and it was supposed to be best 2 of 3 rounds. We didn't manage to get in rounds either. That was another feature that we had to sort of drop, and you see the remnants of it in what we've got going on. However, there is a sort of indicator as to who is currently doing better. Also, it's reversed at the moment, but it still is in there. Let me go ahead and beat on the other character a little bit here, and you can see maybe in the next hit or two, watch that center comedy tragedy mask up top. One more. There we go. It actually flips to the side of whoever is currently in the lead. But again, since we currently have the bars depleting, it's all a little bit backwards from what it's supposed to be anyway. So we have our characters. There is no start menu. There is no real way to quit. You simply rag on each other until one of you hits the other person enough. We did have to add in a kind of knockback. Because if we didn't, then it would be a situation where you could simply press the attack button over and over and over again and just decimate the other person. So let me go ahead and end here. I think one more hit ought to do it. And then we have our little victory animation. It says who wins, and then we go back to the main menu. This is another thing that was done like literally in the last 20 minutes of the jam. Is the game just sort of chilled forever with no additional input on the player that won screen. And we managed at the last possible second to at least take it back to the main menu so that you could start the loop over again. So in total, this is what we were able to create in 48 hours. It was a little 2D fighter, a funny little fighter, if you will. And it didn't meet all of the design goals that we had at the start. And it's sort of reasonable tie to the theme just because of how inverted everything is questionable. It's very, very easy to look at this and be like, I do not understand how this applies to make me laugh, but there you go. Oh, also one more thing, just because I really like it, is I'm going to hit start one more time, and I'm going to turn up the audio in the background because it's good. Excellent. So that said, then, let's kind of break it under the hood and talk about some of the things that we learned and some of the things that we had to go through in order to get this game off the ground. Because normally, I would absolutely say that a fighting game is way beyond, hey, Stray, how's it going? Normally, I would say a fighting game is way beyond the scope of what you can or should be tackling in a game jam in a 24 or in a 48-hour sense. But we did that this game jam. So let's break it under the hood and see some of the stuff that's going on. This is the project. This is the project file that we had throughout that process. And let's sort of see what we got going on here as best as I can. First thing of note about this particular type of game, and I should say that, because of course there's like single player games and games with AI and all sorts of stuff like that, and they all pose their own unique challenges. One of the challenges of this kind of game that I wasn't expecting, that ended up being like really, really, really a difficult stumbling block for all of us, myself and then both of the other programmers, is as follows. The way things are structured in Unreal Engine, which we built this in Unreal Engine 5, the way things are structured in Unreal Engine is you have a series of, we'll say chains of command, right? This controls this controls this, this controls this, and so on and so forth. One of the important concepts is the idea of a controller. And I find that it helps to actually think of a controller literally as a controller. Like this here is a controller. If I wanted to have two players, right, each player needs a controller in order to actually operate anything in the game. Now, by default, whenever you're doing anything in Unreal Engine, right, it says, okay, I'm going to register your current system mouse and keyboard as the controller for the first controller. And by controller, I mean like it literally is a thing. I can go in here, create a blueprint class, and there is player controller. Like your first controller is a thing, and by default, Unreal says that's going to be your mouse and your keyboard. That is the first player controller. It also says by default that if you have any kind of gamepad, this is referred to as a gamepad, if you have any kind of gamepad plugged into the system, that will also be assigned to the first controller, which is controller 0 in most cases. Now, here's the interesting thing, and this was the first stumbling block for everything we were doing, and proved to be a problem literally up until the last minute. What happens if you plug two players into Unreal Engine? Well, very simply, I'll do this here. I'll go up, I'll hit 2, and I'll hit enter. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, what this does is it creates two windows, right? So it creates one window here, and you should be able to see these, right? Is at the top of this first window, it says net mode standalone 0, 0 being index 0, so it's the beginning of the list. And then we have standalone 1. So we have two players, and each player can be controlled independently, right? Currently, you don't see that being replicated because the way it's doing this is it's treating the two players as if they were playing two separate computers, two separate consoles, two totally separate things, right? But that's not what we want. For a fighting game, what we want is both players to be on one screen, but controlling with two different controllers in the same sort of arena. So what we have to do is kind of muck around with the system so that you can have both players existing and coexisting on one screen. And that poses a problem because Unreal Engine literally says, I don't know how to have two players, or two controllers, I should say, on one screen. Now, for the sake of, oh, let me close Steam so you don't see all of my friends doing whatever my friends do. Anyway, so the problem with the controllers, right, is that it says, I don't know how to have just one screen with two separate controllers on one system. That is something that is not innately built into Unreal Engine. And if you have ever worked with Unreal Engine, one of the things that makes it super freaking awesome is there's all of these pre-built tools to help you make the foundations of whatever game it is you're trying to make. And they're quite complex and they're quite good, and there's a lot that you can do with them. However, there are limits. There are things that Unreal Engine does not account for, and this is one of those situations. So because it's something that's not native to Unreal, in order to add this in easily, you would have to do like engine level C++ programming. And we decided at the outset that none of us were going to be using C++, let alone engine level C++, where we're actually editing the functionality of Unreal Engine. So we had to figure out how to do this with blueprints, and the way you do it with blueprints is janky as hell. This thing that you're seeing on screen, this early sort of prototype, is wildly inefficient, and it's wildly bizarre how we got this to work, and I can't wait to tell you about how it works. The idea basically is this. This player here is referred to as player 1. And they exist entirely on their own, and they're completely normal, and everything about this, however you would set it up for programming, is exactly as you would imagine. This is normal. This is absolutely how everything is supposed to work. The other character is not at all normal. In fact, it is extremely abnormal. It is a separate entity that is being controlled by messages and inputs from this character. So everything that happens to player two is kind of dependent on what is happening to player one, right? And that's weird, and that poses some very, very serious problems. I can kind of show you the code if I'm not mistaken. Let me go over to here. We'll go into characters, and we'll pop over into this guy. So basically, what you can see here as just an example, right? So this is all happening in first player. This is a thing that is intrinsic to how first player is working, is that we actually have, and remember that for programming, we usually begin counting at 0 rather than at 1, right? So here I have a whole set of actions, which are, I can register movement to the right and I can register movement to the left. And doing those things causes the character to move. The caveat, though, is that we have another kind of faux controller, which is being controlled from inside player one through player two in order to do some weird nonsense here. And basically, the thing here you can see is by creating this second local player, we're getting the pawn that is being controlled by that second local player through player one and sending it input here. If that sounds weird and loopy and like it doesn't make any sense, that's because it's weird and loopy and janky and doesn't make any sense. Figuring this out was like the key programming problem we had to deal with over this 48 hours. Let me see here. Hold on one second. Oh no, and so the question is, so player one takes inputs from both controllers and just tells player two what to do. Um, Actually, that's pretty accurate. That's a fairly accurate summary of what's going on. Um, there's a little bit more nuance going on there. In that like the second controller kind of never technically exists. It only exists as like a medium to send messages between the two things. Because again, like I said, it really, really helps to think of it as an actual physical controller, right? Um, but the problem is that Unreal Engine 5, and this wasn't even a problem in the later versions of Unreal Engine 4. In the later versions of Unreal Engine 4, this was something that you could get around. The way you would do it is you would tell player one, okay, you get the mouse and keyboard, and you would tell player two that you get a gamepad, right? You would have to have both plugged into your machine at the same time, and then you could have two-player games and it would work fine. But for whatever reason, that just isn't a thing either yet or has changed in Unreal Engine 5. So the way you have to do it is you have to make kind of like a ghost controller too, and then send it messages through controller one in order to get it to work. This is not something that you're supposed to be like, oh, that makes perfect sense and is totally logical. This is supposed to be something that you're like, why is it ever, what on earth are you doing? But part of the reason why I wanted to talk about this tonight and sort of even begin to attempt to explain it is because it's a really, really great example of some of the nutty, wild solutions you have to come up with when something is due in 48 hours, right? When you only have 48 hours to make a thing, this is a great example of you're like, does it work good enough? Cool, send it, right? So that's sort of what we had going on in the programming side of things. Now, you can see here, and this was like, oh my goodness, somewhere around 30 to 35 hours into the project. This was my personal attempt at sort of stitching together all the constituent parts of what everyone had made. Our programmers went off and did their thing, our artists went off and did their thing, our level designer went off and their thing, and at some point we sort of needed to stitch everything together. I learned a particularly valuable lesson about that, which we'll get to in a minute. But this was not, what you're seeing right here up on screen, this was not used in the final game in any capacity. This was just sort of a test to kind of see if we could do camera, get everything together, and then how things would be stitched together. But as I was working on this and cleaning all of this up, I realized we didn't have time. As much as I wanted to do it all much more properly and just sort of cleanly so that you could see what was going on, that was not going to be the case. So what we have to do is we have to go into here, and already this is great, right? And I love to show this off as well, because this is a great example of other stuff that happens under such extreme time constraints. You can see here that we have got Destry, and each of these is a different character, right? We've got Destry testing, we've got player test 2, player test Edgar, Punk Parrot Blueprint, Sassy Blueprint, and those are all different characters that like did and didn't work at various points. Um, One of the things that I think is confusing for people, and if you've worked in any sort of team environment for programming, what I'm about to say sounds like a typical day at the office. But I think a lot of other people sort of misunderstand some of the complications of just working remotely or even locally with other people, just working with people on this something this big, right? So in any kind of programming thing, right? There's usually something that involves multiple people. There's something called version control. And the best way to explain version control is through art. And I love to explain it through art, right? So let's imagine that you are trying to paint the Mona Lisa, okay? But there are two different people working on the Mona Lisa at the same time, and they're doing so from two separate locations. It's not like you have two people each seated at the same canvas. They're in totally different locations, and they can't see what the other person is working on at any given time. Okay? Well, one person decides that they are going to begin work on Mona Lisa's smile, that famous smile that is so important to the picture itself or the painting itself, right? Unfortunately, the other person who's also working on the Mona Lisa also decided that they were going to work on the smile at the same time. So you have two people working on the same area at the same time. And then what happens is they go, okay, I finished the thing I was working on, and they tell that to the other person. The other person's great. That's awesome because I just finished what I was working on. And then both people upload their Mona Lisa smiles at the same time. What happens? The answer is that everything breaks, and that's what version control is, right? Is you can't have two people working on the same thing at the same time, otherwise literally everything will explode. So here, part of the reason why we have this many different characters and everything going on is because we all needed to be working on different things. So as one person was working on the level, another person needed to be working on something else. And then if the other person wanted to work on the thing that the first person was, right? So if one of our character people wanted to work on the level, for example, they would have to talk to the person who was working on the level and say, hey, I need you to stop for a minute so that I can muck around and do whatever it is I need to do. There are ways to kind of navigate this system and make it so that it's a little bit less volatile. But in 48 hours, just our ability to set that up and manage it is kind of non-existent, right? So we have all these different things. This character, if I can find them, uh, was it this one? No. Now I have to find which character was the character. Was it player test? It was player test. This character ended up being sort of our final character. And one of the things that you can see is that we have a lot of things going on to navigate that sort of situation. And I can actually go over as well. Player game mode Mars. Let me go to the event graph. Unless this is the wrong game mode. And again, there's a bunch of just where is the stuff is supposed to be. Um, Did we have modes somewhere else? Maps? Oh no, it was probably here. This is probably where it was. Open level blueprint. Yeah. So what you can see with what we've got going on here, just in terms of programming complication stuff like this, is all of this, and I can kind of separate these into two windows so you can sort of see both side by side, right? Um, all of this was done as we were learning and figuring it out and watching tutorials online and flipping back and forth and doing everything, trying to figure out how to deal with the issue of having two players on one controller. All of this is trying to figure out that one theoretically very, very simple problem. And as like you can see, and I am telling you, this was something that we barely got working at the last possible second. This was a very, very difficult set of things to figure out. And there is some severe spaghetti code in here, literally, because we've got spaghetti noodle wires going every which way because we're using blueprints. So all in all, the code side of things was difficult. It was tricky. And it's a shame, too, because if it weren't for this issue, we got everything, like combat, combos, all that stuff, in and working within, like, the first 10 hours, right? So all of the stuff you would need and want to have in a fighting game, we got that working immediately. We had, like, a finished game at that point, like, instantly. It was so perfect. Everything looked so bright at the beginning because it was so easy to actually get a fighting game up and running. The problem was just that when it came to getting two human players to interact with each other, that took some problems. So that is that on the code side of things. Uh, I can probably talk a little bit about art. I wasn't in charge of actually making the art. There were a few things I made. I did make, let's see, and I don't even know where a chunk of this stuff is. Probably in UI. Yeah. So there were a few things I made. This was a health bar I made. Yeah, yeah, exactly. So as I say, everything explodes. So this was a bit of UI I made. I don't know if any of you remember just sort of like old Spy versus Spy style cartoons, and like Acme, Looney Tunes, the crazy, ridiculous things. This was supposed to be a thermometer, which would reflect your hysteria, and then it would start off as empty or very, very cold, right? And this would heat up as you landed hits and gags, and you found your situation to be funnier and funnier. And then I'm also particularly proud of this comedy tragedy mask. I just think it came out really, really well. So the comedy tragedy mask is like you've got the comedy on one side and tragedy on the other. It's a theatrical thing, and I thought this was a really, really good representation of that. Just as far as an icon goes, I would totally take that on like a hat or a shirt or something. And then for each of our players, we used, and shout out to let's find out. There is a shout out I should give here. Um, there's a fantastic thank you and welcome. We're talking about the Global Game Jam and what I made over this past weekend. Shout out in particular. So itch.io is a fantastic website if you are interested in game development. You can upload games here. You can even sell games here. You can buy games here. There's tools. It's a great community for game developers in general. And they do actually have at the very, very top a game jams section, which shows a giant list of game jams. So even though the Global Game Jam just ended, if you are interested in participating in one or something along those lines, you can always come up here and find tons of stuff going on all the time. But the reason why I'm coming in here is because there's a tools section, and under the tools section, there should be a pixel art tag, and under the pixel art tag, somewhere it should be probably near the top. Let me sort these by Can I sort them by price free? Um, top rated. Top rated might be what I'm looking for. Somewhere on here is a set of character sprites. Can I just, uh, sprites. Let me just type sprites. I was hoping I could find it very easily. For some reason, I swear this thing is always at the top of my list, and now that I'm looking for it, I can't find it anywhere. There is a creator that made a set of sprites that are character sprites for testing and laying things out. And they are fantastic. I use them in any 2D things that I use. We use them in this game, and I can show you what they look like. I'm sorry I can't find the creator. If anyone finds it, comment it, send it in chat. But the base sprites that we use are, or that we were using, are specifically these guys. Let's find, there should be perhaps an idle somewhere in here. Idle, perfect, right? So someone on itch made these sprites for testing your games. They're fantastic. I highly encourage checking them out. I'm sorry I can't give them credit at the moment. Um, I'll look for it later. I'll post it. Anyway, these I highly recommend. These were our stand-in fighters for a long time, as we were testing things out and sort of getting like collisions and hitboxes working. So that's that. Our character artists did manage to go through, and we came up with two characters. The two characters were a punk parrot and a sassy lizard. Let me do probably just the frames here. Neither, as far as I know, um, neither of our character artists had made extensive animations before. There's one of them that had experience with animations and experience with the just animation workflow, but I don't know. I don't know just how much they had done before. And I know our other artists had basically zero experience with animations. So it was really, really exciting to just say, like, hey, the thing we need more than anything else is for you to break down basically each kind of animation into just three poses, right? I particularly like, where is this the swing? Yes. I particularly like our punk parrot here doing the swing of the dead fish. I feel like there's a lot of really good motion, and the timing in that is also really good as well. So we tried to have it be that you do just three breakdown poses for each action. So idle is just two poses that kind of flick back and forth. Attacks are three that sort of highlight the anticipation and then the action, and then some sort of recovery or result from it. Yeah, no, the fish is dead to begin with. Both fish are dead. Which, speaking of, uh, I know while we were talking and sort of brainstorming ideas, several people admitted that getting slapped in the face with a fish is quite hilarious. In high school, I remember during a large ceremony, one of the star football players had a friend who hid behind a door and slapped him across the face as he came through after a big home game with a fish, and it was hilarious. And slapping people in general in the face with a fish was hilarious. And what I like in particular is that we decided that the basic attack for both of our characters should involve a fish somehow. And I really like that our artist who did the lizard interpreted that rather than as slapping someone with a fish, which is the traditional way that you attack with a fish, of course, as using a very, very small swordfish like a dagger. Fantastic. I loved that. I also did not notice literally until just now, and I can even zoom in a bit here so that you can see that the fish has. Can I pause you? Give me a second here. I literally did not notice this detail before. Is that the swordfish is here and like chilling and is has got the like little stress sweat beads there, and that goes into it doing a like get squeezed horrible bug-eyed I did not notice that until just now, so that's fantastic as well. And then, of course, for our background, all of the animated sprites. I like this guy in particular. So at the start of every fighting game, you have those like round one, fight, right? That's what this guy is supposed to be, except he's much like that. I don't know how many of you know of or have seen the movie Who Framed Roger Rabbit, but there's a particularly nightmarish sequence where he actually goes to Toon Town, Toon World. I don't remember what it's called. It was nightmarish for me, at least when I was a kid. And you see these sort of wiggly-armed, bug-eyed creatures all the time. So this is the thing that at the very, very start of the level, he goes swoop and comes across. I should be able to just hit play. Oh, playtest Edgar. Give me a second to maybe just delete that whole thing and see if it fixes anything. Test sprites, blueprints, playtest Edgar. Get out of here. Play? Yeah, there he goes. And on the rest of the way. So, and then this actually is where you can see the implementation of those sprites that we were talking about, some of the early ones. So that was art, that was code. I don't know what was going on for sound. Basically, Nick came in. It was interesting because there was a bit of a language barrier. English was his second language. He did very, very good and was super nice and super just generally like supportive as a team member, which was super awesome. And then like came in and was like, "Can I do music?" And we were like, "Sure." Left for several hours, came back and was like, "Music," and we were like, "That is amazing. Can you do that again?" And he's like, "Yeah." And then he left and then he came back and more music. So that was Nick. He was fantastic throughout that whole process. And this was sort of just the workflow. We, again, like I said, is we got all of the, I'm so sorry. There is actually one additional thing I wanted to show off as far as the programming side of things is concerned. Because it was an early feature that we were supposed to have. It was really cool, and it was part of the reason why we chose Unreal Engine. But because of the problems presented by the two players, we never got to implement this, and I really wanted to show it off because it's so easy and it is super awesome if you intend on using it in anything. So let me go over for just a moment to my sort of cleaned up characters over here. Let's go to, let me minimize that, come into system, and we'll open up this map for just a moment. So as it currently stands, these characters can just walk back and forth, and that is the whole thing that they do. They don't have any other sort of logic implemented in them. And I want to kind of show you something nifty. I'm going to go into blueprints, characters, open up the fighter here. And it should be IAC fighter. Let me also go into input, context, and open this up. Cool. Cool. And let me see real quick what player one's attack button is. C? C. Why the hell is it C? Oh, I know why it's C. I'm going to change this to just left. No, I lied. I'm going to change this to this button for just a moment here. So we're going to hook this up with a kind of silly set of print statements just so I can demonstrate how this works and why it is super cool. So first, IA underscore, just do attack. P1 attack normal, and then I'm going to pull off from this and I'm going to do a print. We're going to print for only 1 second because we only need it to be 1 second, and I'm going to make it nice and red so that we can see it as we play here. And currently it just says hello. I'm going to say Hadoken. This was my go-to fight phrase for testing while I was streaming on the weekend. So Hadouken. So now in theory, if I press left for as long as that is happening, we get Hadouken all the way up here. Up in the top left is where you'll be looking for these print statements. So the thing I wanted to show off and show kind of like a little mini tutorial on how to do, because it happens to be really easy and really awesome in Unreal Engine 5, is combos, right? I thought that combos, normally input in most games is kind of a nightmare, right? So if you imagine old school Mario, right? World 1-1 Mario, right? Doing controls like that are relatively easy because you've got one control for kind of every action that can happen, and that is the extent of it, right? So if you press left, the character moves to the left. If you press the jump button, the character jumps. That's why it's called the jump button. It's not like a context-sensitive button. It's not a map button. It's not a menu, but it is the jump button because all it does is make you jump, right? But things immediately get significantly more complex and much harder to set up as far as input is concerned if you add in anything at all, right? So a classic example is like the From Software games, right? All of those games, for the most part, as far as I know, except maybe the older ones, but all those games have a thing where your character can run, right? And if your character begins running and then they press the attack button, they do a running attack. That's like a classic action game thing. If you're running when you press attack, you do a running attack. But now we have one button, which is the attack button, which does different things based on what the character is doing. Setting that up from scratch is actually really, really hard, right? But Unreal Engine makes it really, really easy. So the curiosity and part of the reason why we picked Unreal Engine is because I knew that it has a combo system. So some of the games which have the most complex and nuanced inputs tend to be fighting games. If you want to do a special attack in a fighting game, like as a classic example, a special attack is actually a combination of an attack button and several directional inputs at a time. The classic attack is a quarter circle motion, meaning that you have to press down a diagonal direction and then a diagonal and then a horizontal direction in order, and in that with an attack button at the same time. So you'd press like down, down, forward, forward, and attack all at the same time just to do one thing. Like if you want to do one thing, it takes 4 separate button presses in order to do that, right? So fighting games are kind of a nightmare, and programming that would be just an absolute headache, right? But like I said, Unreal makes it easy, and we're going to test it and show you how easy it is with this Hadouken thing we got going on here. So here, I press the attack button, I get Hadouken. Problem is that as long as I hold the attack button, I'm getting Hadouken. So we're going to change that to where once it's completed, and I've done it one time, I get 1 Hadouken. So if we see red Hadouken in the far top left there, we've done a good job. Perfect, right? So let's start setting up a combo. And this is what I love, and this is the whole thing, is the reason why we chose this and why I thought that a fighting game would actually be far simpler and far easier to do than I had initially imagined. So in here, I have no combo attacks. I'm going to go ahead and make one little combo attack. Let's go back to actions. I'm going to go to combos. And here I've got blank special. I'm just going to add that into my mappings for my mapping context. Now, if you don't know what input actions are, if you don't know what the enhanced input system is, if you don't know what input context are, all of that is something, ask me. I could explain later. But for the moment, all you need to know is that it's a little place where we just say this button does this, and the game says okay, right? So I'm going to add in one more new mapping here, all the way at the bottom, and I'm going to type in blank special, okay? And for our blank special, it's going to be And I believe I need to actually open the blank special here. This is the cool part. Let me get rid of all of these parts here, right? So all you do in order to make any kind of combo attack is you say, okay, basically, I'm going to give this a unique trigger. Triggers are great. They can be like, as far as the whole enhanced input system is concerned, you can see things here such as hold and release, pressed, pulsed, tapping buttons, things like that. And then we have this combo beta. And that means it's a new thing. This is a new feature that they are experimenting on, which is part of the reason why I wanted to use it for the game jam. So if I hit combo here, it's going to ask me for actions to implement in order to make this combo. So we're going to give it 2 actions. We're going to give it first, you press down, and then you pressed the attack button. So I'm going to give it 2 elements, and the very, very first one is going to be, I want this to be attack, and so we'll do player 1, I'm sorry, we'll do P1 underscore down, right? So first they need to press down, and then they need to press the attack button. P1 attack normal, right? Changing just a couple things is I'm going to change this from triggered off to completed. I'm going to change this from triggered off to completed. And then I'm going to leave everything else as is. So I hit save, and that's already a part of everything we've got down here. So I'm going to go into my fighter, and I'm going to unhook attack normal, and I'm going to bring in blank combo. No, it's called blank special. I was like, I thought it was called blank combo, but it wasn't happening. I'll do this here, and then I'm going to go ahead and just give this to triggered. So now, if everything is working the way I should intend it to, if I press down, nothing happens. No Hadoken in the top left. If I press the attack button, no Hadoken in the top left. But now, if I simply press down and then the attack button, in short enough sequence, we should see Hadoken in the top left. Perfect. And that's awesome. That's super cool. I'm going to add in one more thing, is I'm going to take this from down to right, which again is sort of like the standard quarter circle forward attack combo. I'm going to add in one more element, and down here we'll add in the attack, just like we had before. So now you have to press down, and then you have to press right, and then you have to press the attack button. So boom, 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 boom. Change this over from triggered to completed. And you could adjust the timing required to hit each of these inputs, so you could make it smaller or wider. Now, if I do all of this, if I press down, nothing happens. If I press attack, nothing happens. If I press right, nothing happens. If I press down and right quickly, nothing happens. I need to do the full quarter circle combo and then press the attack button, and we get Hadoken. And that's so cool! That's so cool! Using pre-built commands that you have in order to create like a classic fighting game combo and a complex input system, that is awesome. And that is something that you can do in Unreal Engine 5. It's in beta currently, but like you just do that and it works. And it absolutely works. So it's a shame that we couldn't figure out how to get the 2 players on one screen thing working much sooner. It's a shame that it took us until the last hour in order to actually get that system working. Because if that had been working as soon as we'd gotten everything else working, right, we could have actually had full fighting game combos, right? Full, like, do a quarter circle forward, throw a fireball, jump, do midair attacks. Like, we actually could have had a legitimate fighting game, a miniature fighting game, mind you, but a legitimate fighting game in 48 hours. But alas, some of the other strange, for no reason, technical difficulties of Unreal Engine reared their ugly head, and we were not able to do so. Still, though, we made something pretty cool, something pretty fun, and that was awesome. So I do want to talk a little bit about my personal experience and just some of the things and I might actually put up the game in the background while I talk about this part, because I think it's good for posterity's sake. There's a few things I just want to mention that were interesting parts of what I personally went through for this game jam, right? So I actually have been doing game jams for a really, really long time. I'm going to turn, uh, as dope as the music is, it's also distracting my cerebral lobes. I've done several game jams by this point. I got to participate in the first ever game jam, and the mini that followed after that. I haven't participated in all of them, but the first several I was there. First several New Mexico game jams. I also got to. Oh, I live in New Mexico, by the way. First several local game jams we had on that scale, I got to participate in, and just generally have been around in the sort of local game development scene for a very, very, very long time. And I've been doing this for a very, very long time. I haven't been getting paid to do it for a very long time, but it is something that I've been interested in and sort of talking about for a long time. My particular interest is in design. So, some features of how this was supposed to work together were specifically my ideation. The idea of having a slapstick fighter in the old sort of rubber hose 1930s animation style was the idea of Madison. And then we sort of took off after that. However, some ideas for the wrapping and context for that, in order to make it better fit the theme and also bring back like kind of a more unique element to it, was changing the health bars to go from being full and you deplete them like a standard health bar to something you have to build up, and even giving it, it was supposed to have a deterioration over time to sort of, given the flavor text of the game, a joke is not funny forever, but if it's worth telling once, it's worth telling multiple times to your opponent's face, right? That was just a flavor and a framing that was something I came up with. As well as a couple other ideas of just like going through and again, I volunteered to be the team lead. So part of that involves saying like, this is what you should be working on. This is taking too long. This needs to happen over here. This does not need to happen over here, and so on and so forth. Um, but one of the things that I did this game jam that I don't normally do, because normally I tend to be a bit of a loner during game jams, is I have usually an idea. I usually really like my idea. And I want to go off and make the idea that I had. That's usually how game jams tend to go, and it's because I've done a lot of them before. There's a lot of things that come with interacting with other people that can make it hard, right? And there were struggles with interacting with other people throughout this game jam as well. But for this game jam in particular, I was like, no, I want to be part of a team. I want to work with other people. I want to just see if I can't help guide a bunch of people towards something and see how that goes, right? And one of the things that I did this time, again, which is counter to the way I normally did things, is everyone came in knowing exactly what it was they wanted to do, right? In a lot of previous game jams, I've had people be a part of teams that I was a part of, or trying to sort of help lead, and they had no idea. They're like, I don't really know a lot about games. I know I kind of have skill in this area, but I don't know what I'm doing, and I don't know what I want to do necessarily. So it's always very, very tricky to take someone with very, very little initial direction and say, well, here are some of your options, and here's what we can use your skills to do, right? But for this game jam, everybody knew exactly what it was. It's like, I do art, I do 2D art, I don't know how to do this, I want to do this, this is what I want to get out of the game jam. Everybody was very clear on that, which was very, very awesome. And so what I did was I said, cool, here is what we need, can you do this? And everyone was like, sure, got it. And then left and went to do their things. And for the most part, outside of me doing research on the things that I was interested in and the things that I wanted to accomplish and learn from this game jam, I didn't really put my hands on anything that anyone was doing until really late in the process. And I think that that was one of the mistakes I might have made. And the reason why, in a number of ways, that was a mistake is because the structure of the game is it started at 5 in the evening, 5 p.m. or 1700 on Friday, and then goes to that same time on Sunday. So that's a total of 48 hours. And generally, the structure of the way you should approach a game jam, usually that goes over the weekend like this, is the first night you should stay up a little bit late coming up with your idea and coming up with what it is you're going to do. But on that first night, still to go to bed as early as you can and get rest. Then wake up bright and early on Saturday morning, work as long as you can, and use Saturday night / Sunday morning as your crunch time, right? So that way you don't stay up for the full 48 hours, because that'll totally screw up your internal clock and just make everything really, really hard, especially in those wee hours when you're trying to focus, but you have literally no steam left. And it also gives you a nice flow for how things are supposed to progress. So that's what we did, right? Friday night, we all come up with the idea, and I stayed up later than I should have on Friday night, making sure that it was organized and we had a whole selection of tasks that everybody could pick from and choose from and take care of the things that they wanted to take care of. And I was going to handle anything that didn't get picked up, right? So pick your disciplines, pick the things that you're going to do, literally pull tasks. We had a Miro board, not by my choice. I don't like Miro. I've decided that I hate it, but it was what the event as a whole was using, so I just used it. But pick your tasks, and I'll pick up anything that doesn't get picked up. And so that's what we did throughout Saturday. Is I worked on making sure that combos were a feasible thing that we could accomplish. We had another character who's making sure that we had the basics of the two-player system. We had another character off making a level, and just everybody was off doing the things that they were doing, right? It wasn't until Saturday night, and I checked in with everybody. I was like, hey, is everything going okay? They said yes, and so I was like, cool. And then I just let them continue doing whatever it was they were doing. It wasn't until Saturday night that everyone said, well, we're pretty much done with the things that we're working on. And I was like, cool, can I see the game as we have it so far? And they were like, sure. And what they showed me was just the programming side of things. And I was like, interestingly, on this programming side of things, we have like stand-in sprites, but have we tried implementing the level that our level guy is working on? Have we tried implementing the sprites? It's like, no, but that should be an easy thing to implement, which it should be, right? But everybody went to sleep. Everybody tucked in on Saturday night, and basically Saturday night at literally like 1 o'clock in the morning was the first time that I went in and I started sifting through the fine details of everything that everyone had been working on. And it was a bit of a panic moment because I realized at 1 o'clock in the morning on Saturday night that basically each of the constituent parts that each person had made was not going to fit together, right? It was not going to fit together smoothly or easily, and it was going to be a problem. And I had waited too long by that point, right? I spent the next 6 hours at 1 o'clock in the morning. I worked until about 6:30 in the morning trying to reorganize and sort of distribute everything. That way it could work kind of at all, right? If we actually go back to the Unreal project, right? One of the things I brought up is the fact that over here in Test Sprite, we have animations, player death, hurt damage. We have all these different things here. None of them applied to this, which is where we did and all these things. But then we've got the test sprites. There's no structure to what's going on, so it's hard to find things. For our character, we've got 6 different characters, each going into different game modes, which each have their own settings. In our maps over here, if we take a look at our maps, each map that we had including the map that our level designer was working on versus the map that our programmer was working on versus the map that our UI designer was working on. Each of these had different settings for how they were tackling everything and mucking around with different attributes that each one would need to go in, and just none of it was going to work together. So I spent the 6 hours on Saturday morning making this file, right? And I called it system because I didn't know what else to call it, where we had clear file structure for everything, right? This is the blueprints, this is the characters, these are where the controllers go. If you're working on one thing, you should not be working on a different thing, right? Controllers, tools, input is handled over here. Maps, there should only be really one map. One map not concerning like the main menu map and all that stuff. So I tried to reconstruct everything in a way that not only could we all work on it, but it would all create a system in the end that would do what we needed it to do, right? And here you can see the fruits of that labors. Here I've got actually some interesting things that didn't make it into our game, right? So if I go to what became of the final game, you may notice that as these characters move and walk around, it's one static shot, right? We had the ability to do lots of fun things. We could have had a scrolling environment. We could have had different things that could have been going on in the background as things were going on, different like sort of background elements. You always know in Street Fighter, they've got the guys who are screaming and they're like, yeah. We could have had a lot of that going on, but because so much of our structure and organization was kind of non-existent and mismatch and overlapping in weird ways, there was going to be no way to tie it in together. And it was after I worked for 6-7 hours on sort of reorganizing everything that I was like, if I had noticed that this was going to be a problem earlier, we maybe could have done something about it, right? But now, since we're already, it's Saturday night, by the time I'm done working, it's 7 o'clock in the morning on Sunday. We only have 12 hours to finish what's left. This won't work. And what I will need to do is kind of go through the process of trying to figure out how to take the already spaghetti code that we have and then spaghettiing it together even harder to create a final product. And even I was not able to do that. It was the person who was in charge of a lot of the character stuff to begin with, who went through and brought a lot of that stuff together. And thank goodness he did, because I wasn't going to be able to do it. So the interesting game jam lesson and the interesting sort of design lesson I got from all of this is that generally in a 48-hour thing, like just something like this, you don't have time to argue over like what should the structure be, who reports to who. No, it's got to be a flat structure. Everyone should be able to talk to everyone for the most part, right? Or rather, I should say it should be a generally flat structure and everyone should talk to everyone and there should be cross communication going on. But also with an ad hoc team that has been put together with no prior experience interacting with each other, stuff like that, trusting everyone to absolutely know what they're doing and how it's going to fit together with what anyone else is doing was kind of a mistake I made, right? It's not that each individual didn't know what they were doing. It's that each individual didn't necessarily know what they were doing in the context of making sure that it was open and clear and as accessible as possible for each other person on their team, which also sort of highlights the importance of, if you are ever working in a team environment, you're not making things for yourself. You are making things for other people to use and interact with, and they need to be made with that in mind, right? Part of what's great about all of the drawings and random shit that I do whenever I'm working on my own is I'm going to be the person who's interacting with it. So I know if I name something untitled test delete later _2, which you should never do, right? But if I name it that, I at least know what it was and that I can rename it later, right? But if you are working in a project where someone else is going to be handled that file, you absolutely need to name it something other than that, right? That naming convention is not good enough. If you are making spaghetti code, even if it's well documented spaghetti code, and no hard feelings to our person who is in charge of this, because I would have made spaghetti code too. Where's the thing? Hold on. Here we go. Here we go. Player test here, right? This, in theory, is like well documented in that it's been commented and it says this is what handles health and damage, right? That's fine and that's great. The problem is that these things are being sent to other locations and other blueprints and other parts of the code, including like levels and other characters and stuff like that. And we don't have enough in our description here that actually explains where those things are being called. And I know might seem like, well, it takes time to enter all of that information, which is true, right? But let's say it takes you an hour, and you only have 48 hours, right? Then let's say it takes you an hour to accurately write out and type out all of the places where all of these things are being called and really describe where all of your information is going. And you're like, yeah, but that's an hour. I spent an hour doing that. That's an hour of development time I don't have, right? That's true. But let's say it takes each other programmer 2 hours or more to decode everything here because they have way to look or no way to figure it out, right? Or better yet, instead of taking 2 hours, if you took the 1 hour of your time, they can read descriptions and easily and instantly find everything, right? 1 hour for you translates to, like, worst case scenario, 6 to 8 hours added up for everyone else on your team, or just a bonus of 6 to 8 hours of not needing to do something for your team. So that was sort of the, like, I don't want to call it a mistake, but it was something that I maybe, if I take on the mantle of a team lead, is something that I should have been paying more attention to from the outset, is making sure, hey, I hate to breathe down your neck, but are you making sure that this is something that everyone else can work on, right? Because you don't know who else is going to need to work on this, and it could be anyone. So that was my big lesson sort of from this process, is just I wish I had been a little bit heavier handed, been a little bit more of that irritating sort of over your shoulder character who's like, hey, do your shit correctly, please. Because while no one likes that person, right? And you can go too far with it. You can absolutely go too far with it, right? It is one of those things that is maybe a little bit necessary, especially at the outset, because once everybody's on the right track and is doing it correctly, then you don't need to check in, right? But if you don't start there, then you end up with 12 hours left and like, oh my God, this won't mesh together well, right? And we're going to spend the last half of our time, or the last leg of our time, just trying to figure it out. So anyway, that's a whole bunch of Destry's personal game development journey, figuring stuff out. So that was Global Game Jam 2024. That was what we made, and that's what's going on here. I spent, again, Monday and Tuesday just recuperating because I not only didn't sleep Friday night, I also didn't sleep Saturday night. And my sleep schedule is now, I'm broken. So I'm still in the process of fixing that. But it did lead up to a couple other interesting things, and I'll have this going on in the background. A couple other interesting things that I want to talk about as far as going back to the double-sided project that I'm working on, streaming every day, the YouTube channel, and just a little bit of conversation about everything, because things are weird, right? Things are just, some things are weird, right? Part of being on this weird topsy-turvy schedule is it's making me realize I have a great deal of anxiety about streaming. At least I have a great deal of anxiety about streaming every day. The anxiety comes from the fact that frequently I need to spend time on my own figuring stuff out. And I can actually show you a prime example of that. Oh, no, 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 no. No. Did I just break? Did I just break the stream? No, we still streaming? I pressed Alt F4 on the wrong thing. Okay, we're still here. Yes. Woo! Sorry. Over here, let me close this. um, what I was going to say is that my initial idea was that I was going to stream every day and just have you guys come and hang out with me, right? That was the idea. There's a problem with that, though, which is that it's not always exciting. It's not always fun. And I'm not even focused on you guys during those streams all the time. So this is something here that I was trying to figure out today, for example. What this is Blender, and these are bendy bones. Bendy bones are a cool feature that is unique to Blender. It doesn't exist in other programs. What it lets you do is it lets you create smooth transitions along individual bones, so that things deform much more nicely than they would otherwise in standard rigs, right? But you can't export a bendy bone to any other program, especially not a program like Unreal, for example, right? However, despite the fact that you can't export a bendy bone to Unreal because it is a thing that is unique to Blender, the top bone is a bendy bone that cannot be exported to Unreal. But the bottom bone, which is made up of 9 smaller bones, is a method of sort of transferring that behavior to a chain of other bones so that you can export it to Unreal Engine, which is cool as hell. That's bonkers cool. That you can take this unique Blender feature and actually transcribe it to something else that you can export to Unreal. That's awesome. This took me like today. It took me all day to figure this out, right? And there's a reason why I'm trying to figure it out. There's a reason because I'm going to use this, right? But me streaming the 8 hours of sifting through tutorials and comparing those tutorials with my own knowledge just isn't good content. Like, it's not good. It's not fun to watch. If I have to watch a like 45-minute tutorial for like 3 minutes of wisdom that I was looking for, but I didn't know where it was in the tutorial, if I was even going to get it and stuff like that, that sucks for you. That sucks to watch. It's not fun to watch me just go like this at my desk for literally hours at a time. It's not great. It's not great. So I've been having this extreme anxiety over streaming every day because sometimes I just need to sit down and figure stuff out so that I can do something cool. But the figuring it out part is not cool. It's not fun to watch. It's not engaging. I'm trying to focus on something else. If I'm distracted by a stream, then that takes forever. The other thing too is as I've been streaming every day, I also haven't been posting videos, more structured things. I don't like editing videos, but I do think that they come out nicer. I think they're a lot more interesting and watchable for like a wide group of people. So I'm in this weird place where I've been streaming a lot, and that's been getting me over, believe it or not, I'm camera shy. Believe it or not, this process is actually hard for me. So streaming has been helping with that immensely, right? I'm feeling much more comfortable hopping at least in front of you guys and saying like, hello. But streaming every day, I don't think is necessarily the most useful thing. There's also other things that I want to work on, right? And a really great example is right down here. Here we see it says just below me, I promise I am going to make everything beautiful, including this border eventually, right? And I haven't been doing that. I'm nervous about, like, I've got this other project that I'm working on. I'm nervous to even show you guys me working on things like this border, or editing videos, or making just quality of life improvements to this sort of community that I'm trying to grow. Because I have some preconceived notion for no good reason that people are going to be like, oh, that's not that project that you're supposed to be working on. You're wasting your time, and this should be like a thing that happened. I don't know. I'm just sort of stressed out about the presentation of everything and the way things are being presented. I hear and I'm told through research that I've done that you should have a consistent streaming schedule so that people know when to tune into you. But at the same time, these consistent streams are also causing problems because I don't want them to be too infrequent. I feel like one a week is not enough, but I feel like every day is too many. So I'm doing all of these crazy oscillations between too much, too little, don't know, is this right, is this not right? I don't have time to work on the things I need to. And also, it's boring if I show that to you. So there's just a whirlwind of confusion about what I should do. So every couple weeks, I change the schedule, right? And I still haven't quite hit on what it is I should be doing or shouldn't be doing, and so on and so forth. So I think what I'm going to do is I think I'm not going to stream for the rest of this week and the weekend that follows, right? So that means next Monday is the time where I imagine that you guys will hear from me again. And what I want to do is try a new schedule around that time, and it might be very sparse. And on the one hand, I don't want it to be sparse, right? I don't want you guys to hear from me like super rarely. Because that always is I find really frustrating for YouTube channels. Also, thank you HTG, and thank you for everyone else who is still here and listening to me. This is not necessarily a fun topic, and I appreciate you just hearing me out because it is stressful to talk about these things. But I appreciate you guys. Or let's do the what's the one? Yeah, I appreciate you guys. Anyway, but yeah, I think I'm stressed out by YouTube channels where like they make really good content, but I don't know if it's going to be 1 week or 1 month or 1 year until their next video is uploaded. And despite some people being very successful with that, that's not what I want to do with you guys. I would much rather have there be some kind of semi-consistent thing that you're like, we can at least rely on Destry to make a thing on this kind of frequency, with this kind of regularity, right? I don't know what that is, but I want that to be something that you can sort of count on. I do like the uber long streams, right? For a while, I was streaming, and it was for huge. I was trying to do 8 hours a day with like a lunch break in the middle, and I really liked those. And I really liked those because people would pop in and out throughout the day, and they'd be like, "Hey, what's going on?" And those honestly had some of the most viewership, and most engagement and most exciting times for me to talk with you guys because I was there and I was chilling. But usually also during those times, I had like the cool stuff I figured out, I could then show off, right? Because I had spent all the time figuring these things out, and I could be like, oh yeah, check this dope thing that I can do now. Like, we're painting with brushstrokes, boys. It's awesome. So I really like that. I want to keep that idea. I want to have sort of time on my own, kind of away from you guys, like distance boundaries, to do research, to come up with cool stuff, and also to make things that are nice. I want to go back to making videos. As much as I dislike editing, I want to be able to have a nice polished thing where it's like, let me show you something that's cool in a structured, like one way thing where it's like, this is the presentation of this thing. So I would like to go back to doing that. Just a bunch of things that I'd like to do. And I kind of want to spend the rest of this week figuring out how I want to do that. Because I don't know. I imagine that Monday, I don't know if I'll post a video. I don't know if I'll put a message in the Discord. I don't know if I'll stream. I'm not sure what it'll be, but Monday is when I'll come back to you with a new plan for a new thing to try while I'm still figuring this all out. I do apologize that it's taken me so long. It's weird because it's in kind of a niche, right? Where in some ways, right, the things that I like because to a certain extent, you see people who have thousands, millions of viewers on their channel, and all they do is smash a jug of milk with a light bulb, right? Because that's what they do, and I do try to like provide insight and engage with you guys and share like this is really cool information about this thing. Plus, here's something even more unique than what you normally see that I can do with it. Um, and it's been hard to try and retain people and retain attention and figure all of that out, but I want to. I am enjoying this. It is a lot of fun, and I want to make games, and I want to make games that are cool and not just boring clones of Call of Duty. Because I could make a simple clone of a game, right? I could make simple dumb things that don't matter, but I don't want to do that. I want to try something new. That's the whole reason why I like games in the first place, is they give me chances to try things that haven't been tried before. Weird art styles, weird rigging stuff, all sorts of weird mechanical ideas, living out weird non-power fantasies, right? Things that are off the beaten path. And I really enjoy that. I just don't know quite how to present that yet and manage my own sort of anxieties and trepidations about doing so. So, with all of that said and done, I'm probably going to sign off and I'm just going to figure a bunch of stuff out. And I'm going to try and come in next Monday with more of a plan so that I can present things to you guys in a more streamlined way. Um, Thank you. Really? Just thank you for being here with me. Thank you for taking part of this. Thank you for being supportive. Thank you to the adventurers. The adventurers are is the label I have for everybody who supports me on Patreon. Um, Times are kind of rough for me, and that it's not a huge amount of financial support, but it does mean the world to me, and I don't want to tell you how many times that financial support has come in really clutch in my personal life. I don't want to reveal that that's like been crazy critical. But thank you guys for supporting me in that way. Um, I want to do the best I can, and I just don't know what the best way to do that is yet. I don't have a manual. If you have a manual, please send it to me. But currently, it's just trial and error until I figure it out. So, um, but yeah, I'll come up with a plan. I'll come up with a strategy, and I will try and make sure that we get some of these quality of life things going, so that it's not this weird kind of jank situation. Like an just little things, like an intro, like a little like welcome to my corner of the internet. That's for me to figure out. Thank you guys. As always, I'm going to tell you to get some rest. Have a good night's sleep. Take care of yourselves. Take care of yourselves better than I took care of myself over the game jam. And in general, I love to stress myself out, so please don't do that to yourself. Um, have a good night, and I'll see you guys in the morning here, okay?